I work nights in radiology. If you've never been in a hospital imaging suite after midnight, it's a particular kind of quiet, cold air that smells like contrast and mop water, the compressor under the CT gantry clicking like a metronome for your nerves, the fans in the PACS workstation whispering through their filters as if they're practicing to be ventilators. The day shift leaves their coffee cups with the measured optimism of people who always believe in morning. Night shift inherits their empty sleeves and their half-written notes, and we make friends with the building's second clock, the one that beats in machine relays and chilled water valves. We run one CT on nights, one portable X-ray, and if the ER decides to throw a party we wake MRI and ask it to care. It's me, a nurse from imaging to help with lines, and security roaming past once in a while to pretend none of us are alone. Our CT is a 64-slice Siemens that knows more about breathing than some interns. We leave it parked with the table flush to the gantry and the laser crosshair asleep. The RIS lives on a monitor that never quite goes to sleep, accession numbers lined like soldiers, 24 to 303,812, 24 to 303,813. The PACS loom has its own lullaby, mouse clicks, soft double tones when a study pushes to archive, a little green icon that decides how much of the night it can forgive. If you know the language, the whole room talks. If you don't, it still talks, you just call it humming. At 0:43 the ER sent up a CT head without contrast, GCS-14, intoxication, rule out bleed. The ER nurse wheeled a patient who smelled like rain and menthol. We did the tilt, told him, don't move, don't talk, and he did both, and we got our slices anyway because the head is forgiving when you ask nicely. I pushed the study to PACS, watched the series 2 axial stack chew across the progress bar, and felt that small, clean night relief when the images land in reporting without cracking. The RIS chime that says, report assigned, sounds like a toy piano, which would be insulting if it weren't so comforting at 1 a.m. The thing about nights is the gaps. You finish a study, tidy the table, reset the scout line, and then you sit with a building that doesn't entirely trust you. I started a warm saline bag on the contrast heater for nobody in particular and checked the injector just to give my hand something that believed in routine. In the hallway I heard the elevator do the half-bored polite stop it does when it arrives to a floor nobody called from, the relays clack, the fan hiccups, the small gust of conditioned air the cab always carries with it like a passenger who never tips. The RIS pinged, one of the tones that doesn't match anything, like an error dialogue from a program that's been dead since Windows XP. A new line printed into the work list, 24 to 303,820, CT chest PE protocol, stat, bed 317. The patient name was a string of question marks for a blink, then the RIS filled itself in with a last name I recognized from old radiology teaching files, a teaching slide one of the attendings liked, not someone alive on our census. The MRN number format was wrong by 2 digits. The location, 3rd floor, bed 317, rang the building's second clock in my ribs. That room is dark, has been dark since they closed the old telemetry wing for asbestos remediation. If you've been around a while, old room numbers live in your mouth like phone numbers. 317 hasn't had a chart in a year. I did the thing you do when a machine says the wrong word once. You tell it didn't say that. I clicked the order open. The ancillary data was naked. No phone number, no ordering provider, no indication field besides SOB/PER/O, which is ER shorthand grafted onto inpatient. The accession number looked real enough, date code, sequence, until you looked at the time, 1 hour and 12 minutes. The colon seconds, zeros, like a template had been filled by a cautious ghost. Orders from nowhere have daytime explanations, HL7 messages replayed after a network burp, a test domain bleeding into production, someone fat-fingered a merge and sent a copy. You learn not to mythologize every quirk. Even so, I picked up the phone and called the charge nurse on 3 because humans trump my own paranoia. 317 is closed, she said, bored and kind. We took that whole block off. There's plastic and negative air. If you have an order on it, it's a bad joke. Come up if you want to see a construction fan teach a door how to breathe. The RIS blinked again. The same order requeried itself as if impatient. And the CT gantry, the machine we leave asleep between cases, woke its lasers, painted a red crosshair on empty air, and moved the table in a few inches as if it remembered exactly where its chest should be. I thumbed the table release and eased it back to home, the table's motor making the same polite little whine I've heard across 5 employers. We set the encoder to lock position for a reason. Night shift gets to be clumsy, but only once. The injector screen flashed its status, ready, empty, 0/100 ml, and then, the way electronics do when a setting gets asked to be itself, it changed to protocol, CTPE. We keep a template like that, biphasic, for milliliters per second, 100 kVp, 1.0 pitch, because PE scans don't wait for sunrise. Only nobody had pressed it. Night shift always blames their elbow first. My elbow was tired but innocent. Security walked past the glass on their hourly sweep. It was Hale, who pretends to be born of elevators but is really born of wiring closets. She tapped the glass with 2 knuckles the way people tap glass when they don't want to be rude. Quiet, she mouthed. I gave her the palm wobble that means, it was. She stepped in, looked at the lasers doing their red dream on the gantry, and raised an eyebrow. I said the thing you say when you want the building to feel watched, we are not scanning a patient from a closed bed. The CT thought about that and turned its lasers off like it had decided to be polite. The RIS dropped the phantom order to the bottom of the list as if ashamed. We both laughed in the way people laugh when night decides to be reasonable. Then the overhead speaker crackled with an overhead page that didn't belong to us, just a fragment, like someone had leaned on the switch and breathed, hold your breath in, hold, hold, hold. The standard scanning prompt, the one that pipes into the room when the gantry wants to be a coach. We don't route that to the hallway. We barely route it to the room. Hale and I listened to the last hold smear into white noise and I felt my scalp do that thing it does when the body tries to parse a sound as a shape. Day shift explanations tried on their jackets. Someone cross-wired the audio zone during construction, or a field service guy tested the room from a remote panel hooked onto a piece of scrap cable he shouldn't have used. Fine. I can hold 2 thoughts. I can believe in miswired audio and also in the way the table drifted back toward isocenter when I took my hand off it, like a dog finding a spot it thinks you meant. I cleared the phantom order from the work list. That's the part that should end a story like this. You mark it cancelled, free text a line in the log, bad HL7, test order, bed closed. And you tell the building you're smarter than wires, and the building agrees by not moving. Instead, the PACS console chimed with an incoming study that had not left our room. The IT tone, 2 notes, a fifth apart, announced new images received, CT chest, PE, 24 to 303,820, Series 6, 12 images. That's not enough slices to be real. That's not enough slices to be anything. The preview thumbnail showed black and white, lung windows, a mediastinum that looked like it remembered being real. The study time stamp read 120. There are ways a study can show up in PACS without a scan. Internal training archives can be repushed by lunatics with admin access. A tech can be pulling a case to teach a resident at 9 a.m. and accidentally aim it at live. But the Series 6 label was ours, our naming convention, our station AE title. The study instance UID wore a date code that belonged to tonight. No one is pushing training cases to nights, I told the air, which is what you do when the person you want to argue with is your own skull. I opened the series. It was the kind of nonsense that makes you throw a pen. 12 images, not contiguous slices so much as stutters of anatomy, 2 at the level of the carina, 1 down by the bases, 1 up at the clavicles. The acquisition parameters listed a pitch we don't use and a tube current the machine can't be programmed to pick by itself. The breaths were wrong. You can see somebody's breathing when they aren't coached, the diaphragm hits a rhythm it can keep, Here the diaphragm motion in the bases was wrong in a way I don't have a word for, like a person who learned to breathe from a diagram. The DICOM header had fields that made my stomach drop not because they were spooky but because they were dull. Referring physician held the name of a doctor who left 6 years ago. Patient weight was 0 kilograms because some training sets do that when they're lazy, ours don't. Body part examined said chest, fine, patient position said HFP, head first prone. Which we never do for PE because nobody wants to drown in their own ribcage. Hale stood by my shoulder with the expression she uses for broken card readers. Is that live? She said, as if images could be live. No, I said, and then, like a liar, I hope not. I right-clicked, pulled the DICOM info to a separate pane, scrolled for accession, for our order record. The accession matched the phantom order. The requested procedure ID field had the right form, the internal station name had our machine's nickname. The operator's name field was blank except for a 0000, which I have seen in bad header entries 100 times, and never once at night for a study that did not exist. I called Lorna in Telecom because she speaks HL7 the way some people speak Italian. If a cancelled order generates an accession and that accession gets a matching DICOM header, I said without hello, where is my ghost? She hummed the hum she uses when translating. No ghost, she said. Or a boring one. If a buried feed hiccups, RIS messages looped, a test table got resurrected, you can get a header that looks right applied to a thing that's got no body. Did you get a body? I looked at the screen where 12 slices insisted on pretending they were something. I got 12 pieces worth of nerve damage, I said. She sighed. I'm coming down. The RIS printed another order with the neat cowardice only printers have, 131, CT chest, PE, bed 317, stat. The minute marks, 12, 20, 31, felt like the shadow of day shift med rounds, it's always the 12s and the 30s with this building. The CT declared itself ready, PE protocol again, as if obedience were a ritual. I let it sit. If a machine wants you to chase it, don't. We waited. The overhead speaker stayed a good citizen. The injector pretended to be a kettle. When Lorna arrived she brought the tower that lets her sniff the HL7 and the DICOM right at the wall. She plugged the capture device into the port that feeds our room, the little white keystone jack that knows more hospital secrets than any physician, and scrolled packet traces the way some people flip prayer beads. There, she said, and I leaned in and saw green rows of messages that might as well have been Chinese until your eyes adjust. ORM-001 order messages with placer order number 24 to 303,820, then an ORC with CA, cancelled. Later, a DICOM C-store from an AE title that was ours by one character, CT_1 instead of CT1. That underscore doesn't exist, I said, and wished I'd never learned how to read these things. It exists on a closed lab VLAN, she said, almost tender. It used to be a training sandbox, before someone retired it. It's not supposed to be bridged. She scrolled. These images have study date tonight, but the UID range belongs to, hold up. She clicked her tongue, which Lorna does when a number argues. That UID vendor route isn't ours. It's a vendor demo unit route. Somewhere, somehow, the firewall dragged the net for something that isn't on our map and found a thing that thinks it's a scanner. We called facilities, because when the hallways begin to speak a dialect, facilities knows which vent taught them. Singh arrived with the Pelican case and a look that said he was practicing patience because patience is cheaper than new conduit. He traced the CT room's network drop through the ceiling with a toner wand and a grin that looked like a child with a metal detector. He found the patch panel, found a loop that should not be looped, found a little unmanaged switch someone had used during renovation and left where careful hands forget things. He pronounced it guilty with that grace electricians have when absolving a room. This could echo a feed, he said. This could cross a VLAN on a bad day. This could ask the building a question and get an old answer. We isolated the CT, hard set the AE titles, pushed the injector back to default like a chastened dog. For an hour the building behaved, and we ran an abdomen for a post-op bleed and an ankle for an ED doc who hated sadness and loved x-rays because bones at least pretend to be honest. At 3:13 the PACS chimed a tiny sound for a tiny gift, one image received, Scout. A single AP topogram, the hatched background of planning, a ghost skin from sternal notch to iliac crest. On the top of the Scout, in the field where the machine stamps instructions, the word hold was printed not as our CT prints it, but in a block typeface we retired years ago. I suppose now is when I should say the temperature dropped or the gantry light flickered. If you've seen enough rooms at night, you know they all drop and flicker. The unnatural thing is the way the study's institution name populated, not our hospital, not the mothership downtown, but the name the vendor used when they trucked their demo unit in a decade ago. I remember that week, enough of us do. We all took turns lying on the table and pretending to be trauma to justify a longer lunch. The vendor tech's name in the header was a young man who wore cologne too sweet and has since become, I'm told, a rep for someone else. He doesn't work here. His name should not print on our night. Lorna stood behind me and let the trace scroll lines like a lullaby. That's not crossing now, she said. We boxed the loop. If this is still arriving, it's not walking across my map. Hale had the radio open at her shoulder, the channel hissing the soft nothing that nurses call company. The three of us watched the Scout like we were daring it to be an artifact. The RIS did not generate a new order. The building's second clock laid its hands on 3:20 without being asked. The injector screen slept with its ready light in that particular green vendor's love because it looks like permission. If you've ever been in a room with a machine that wants to help whether you deserve it or not, you know this exact composition of light and hum and human stubbornness. Day came. Day takes things away so they can be believed. IT returned the training sandbox from wherever a retired VLAN goes to die. They changed our AE titles like changing a lock, they yelled in an email that used the word reminder a lot. Facilities pulled the little switch and dated their tape with a neat Sharpie. An engineer for the vendor blessed our protocols with a printout and a smirk that pretended not to be tired. A radiologist with a resting skeptical face scrolled the 12 slices and pronounced them nonsense, with a mercy I appreciated. Artifacts from a demo feed, he said. Weird, but not supernatural. Keep the Scout for your scrapbook. I nodded because radiologists sleep in a house made of patterns. If they believed in miracles they would drown in them. Here is what none of that addresses because it shouldn't have to and because the day has other claims, the times. 1:12, 1:20. 1:31, 3:13. If you know night shift medicine, you know the 12s and the 30s, the way telemetry used to round chest pains to the scanner before the wing closed, the old PE rush that used to roll up from 3 after midnight. I found a laminated strip in a drawer, somebody's ancient workflow taped to the console, that lived there long enough to be sticky and said, tell 3, if PE suspected, call CT, prep injector, chest at 20 after. Breath holds, hold. Someone's handwriting in thin Sharpie had added, remember 12s/30s. It was a note to a new tech from a kinder night. I kept the Scout, because keeping dumb pieces of paper makes night shift feel like it can prove itself to daylight. In the top margin, a ricochet of dust makes a tiny constellation that, if you tilt the monitor, looks like a patient marker even though it isn't, because I have never been good at letting things be only one thing. In the DICOM header, operator's name is still 0000 because someone once put a 0 there and I am not paid enough to move history out of a file. If you print the header, the thermal paper will turn ghost blue under your hand in 6 months. I will still own the story. I'll still know that machines are generous, they try to serve what they were taught. The building keeps whatever schedule it learned when it was busy, even after you tape a door and hang a sign and tell an old bed it isn't a bed anymore. Sometimes, when I sit alone and the scanner does its cooling breaths between real patients, I hear the overhead test itself with a whisper of, hold. And I speak back because it is rude not to. I say, we're not doing 317 tonight, out loud to the gantry. Most nights it agrees, and the table stays home and the RIS believes in only the living. On the nights it doesn't, a line prints on the work list with an accession that will not exist by noon, and I cancel it like you cancel a superstition, and the PACS will beep once, and I will open a study that is more suggestion than flesh, and I will scroll slowly until the suggestion hits the bases where breath is truth, and I will whisper the count, to 4, to 10, to however many night needs, while the building takes its own breath around me and waits to see which clock I am keeping.